Hi, Catherine here, and welcome back to Should I Be Worried? A series where I talk about my fears and then analyze whether I should actually be worried about them. And I will say, this week is going to be a little different than the other weeks, in that this fear that I'll be discussing is not a fear I actually have. I am surprisingly chill about this, and I'm not chill about much. So for the last few days, I have been on travel websites trying to pick out a flight for a vacation I am planning sometime this summer. And as I was looking through all these travel sites, I kept seeing these alerts about the Boeing 737. And I hadn't really honestly heard much about these crashes. I knew that there were crashes, but I didn't really know much about the specifics. So I decided to do some research because I know, again, this is not a fear I have. I actually really like flying. I have since I took my first flight when I was like 16 or something to California. Loved it. I took a flight lesson actually, and it was really expensive, and that's why I only did one of them. But if I had a bunch of money, I would definitely spend it on flight lessons. But anyways, these alerts, they kind of got me a little bit concerned, and I wanted to do some more research. So I did, and this is what I found. So these alerts were specific to the Boeing 737 MAX 8 airplane, which is a type of airplane that was released by the company in March 2018. So a relatively new plane. And the big thing about this particular type of plane is that it was supposed to be better than its predecessor, which is like everything is supposed to be better than the previous version. So no shock there. But one of the things that the engineers did to make this plane better was put bigger engines on the plane. But in order to put bigger engines on this plane, they actually had to move it to fit. They had to move these engines on the plane to fit. And when they moved them, they actually switched kind of the aerodynamics. They changed a bit the aerodynamics of the plane. But Boeing, one of the things that Boeing really wanted was for the plane to feel like the older planes. So the 737's been around for decades, and it's a pretty kind of, I don't know if it's like a beloved, but at least a liked plane by pilots and by passengers. And so they wanted these new planes to still kind of feel like those. And one of the things that they did to help that was, or what they thought would help that, is by installing this thing called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, which is easier just to say MCAS. And what this system was supposed to do was, so when an airplane's flying, one thing that can happen is the airplane could stall, in which case the nose kind of tips up because the air kind of pushes the plane up. And what this system, this MCAS system, was supposed to do was there were sensors, 2 sensors on the plane, and these sensors were supposed to tell the plane to shift the nose down, and so that it would essentially prevent the plane from stalling, because when a plane stalls, it could crash. And that's actually has happened before on other airplanes, and some other more notable crashes have happened because the airplanes have stalled. And so that's what this system was supposed to do. The thing is, in these 2 particular crashes, so there was one in Indonesia, and then there was one in Ethiopia. And these 2 crashes, they believe the reason why they happened was because a sensor messed up and told the plane that it was stalling and it needed to tip the nose down. Well, it did that, and the pilots, having maybe not reacted well enough, or maybe not known specifically how to maneuver this plane with this new weird kind of software on it, they weren't able to correct that. And so the plane, what they could have done is they could have switched this system off and then be able to pilot the plane, but they didn't, and they believed through the investigation that what happened was the plane crashed because of this malfunctioning of the software. Now there's a bit of a scandal saying that Boeing rushed the FAA certification process, and that's why this plane that had this problem on it, this software problem, was able to have passengers to be flown around the world, was because they pushed this process too quickly. But then there's people saying that, well, the FAA should have stopped that. Well, one thing is that the FAA, yes, they have this process to make sure planes are safe, but it's typically bad business for airplane manufacturers to make bad planes. I mean, it's costing Boeing billions of dollars because of these crashes and because of all this press around these planes. And so there's a little bit of self-policing involved, but then there's also, and I don't know if this is true or if this is just, conjecture, is that this Boeing company is an American company. It's a union company. It's, I would say, pretty respected. And they are competing against the European company Airbus. And there's some people saying that the reason why FAA allowed this kind of rush job of the certification process is because Boeing is competing with this European company. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've read. And all of this knowledge probably doesn't help any of you guys who are, in fact, afraid of flying. I'm sorry, but I will get to it. I will get to, hopefully, some information that will put your mind at ease just a little bit. So, one, you should not feel alone, because I read on the internet, well, I didn't actually find like specific good data, but I read anywhere from 6.5% of Americans to 25% of Americans are afraid of flying. And I don't know what number to necessarily believe. Maybe they're both are wrong. Regardless, if you take either number, that's millions of people. So there are millions of people like you who are afraid of flying. You are not alone. It is actually it's a specific phobia classified by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So it is a legit thing. It is a fear that many people have. I don't know if that's necessarily like a thing that you may find comforting, but it's a thing. Hopefully, what you will find comforting is the statistics about how unlikely it is for you to actually die in a plane crash. Let me drop some more numbers on you, all right? So the FAA reported handling 15.8 million flights in 2017. And these flights carried more than 971 million passengers. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board in 2016, which is the most recent data I could find, reported that there were 1,335 accidents, and of those accidents, there were 221 fatal airplane crashes, and those resulted in 408 fatalities. So again, let's compare those numbers. There were 15.8 million flights in 2017, and there were only 221 fatal accidents in 2016. There were 971 million passengers on airplanes in 2017. And in 2016, there were only 408 fatalities from flying on airplanes. So those are some pretty significantly different numbers. Now, also, and this is, if you are interested in, if you have morbid curiosities, you should look at the National Safety Council's list of odds of dying in various ways. They actually admit on the site, like, this is kind of morbid. And they put that you have a 1 in 1 chance of dying. So, feel like the honesty. I appreciate the honesty. But this list said, so put some things in perspective. You have a 1 in 114 chance of dying in a motor vehicle crash. You have a 1 in 9,821 chance of dying in an air and space transport incident. Now, even more. So this is actually probably one of my favorite parts. This feel really weird to say favorite when we're talking about such a morbid thing, but an interesting part. you have a 1 in 3,461 chance of dying by choking from food. So 1 in 3,461 choking from food, 1 in 9,821 in air and space transport incident. Almost 3 times more likely to choke on food and die than you are from dying in an airplane crash. That should be, I don't know if that's comforting flying in airplanes or concerning eating food. I don't know which. I also looked up some tips on how to make your fear of flying, to help that fear of flying or make it a little less. And I think the big things I took away is really ultimately the best way is just to distract yourself, either through reading or listening to music, watching movies, talking to someone, anything you can do to distract yourself from thinking about being on the flight, from hearing all the beeps and feeling all the bumps on the plane. You need to ultimately distract yourself. And I think one thing that you can also do is do some deep breathing, kind of get yourself into that serene space where, again, you're not thinking about being on an airplane. And if all that doesn't work, you can also drink alcohol. That's another way you can help your fear of flying. So that's it today, where I talk about a fear I don't actually have, but a fear that I may have, because honestly, reading a lot of this stuff about this Boeing 737 stuff really kind of scared me. But all those planes have been grounded, so we're good. The flight that I booked is on an Airbus, which is the competitor of Boeing. I didn't do that intentionally, but it just worked out that way. So I don't think I'll still be afraid when I eventually take another flight, and I hope that this video reassures you a bit that it's pretty unlikely that you will be in danger when on an airplane. But who knows? That's up to you. Anyways, thank you again for tuning in this week to Should I Be Worried? I release episodes every Monday. I also have a podcast, the same title, you can find on SoundCloud. So I appreciate all of your support, and I will see you again next week. Bye!